All right, welcome everyone. So excited to have you all here. My name is Heather House. I'm a manager at RMI, formerly Rocky Mountain Institute, and I'm on our carbon-free transportation team. I've worked in clean transportation for over a decade and was previously with Austin Energy's EV team before joining RMI. So today, we're going to be talking about how automakers are approaching vehicle to everything. But since everything's pretty broad, let's put some parameters on that. We're going to be focused more on vehicle to grid, business, home. So we know with bidirectional charging, EVs will be able to store electricity, send that back to the grid, or serve as a power source to supply energy to homes. Before we dive in, I just want to share some quick logistics. If you have any questions throughout this, please drop them in the Q&A. If there is a question that I think is really great, I will pull that and I'll ask it in the middle of the panel instead of waiting for the end. And if you don't have a question, but you really want me to ask someone else's question, upvote that, and I'll focus on the questions with the most upvotes. And if it's relevant, add your organization. If we need to know that when thinking about the question. So let's get into it. I'm joined by a really talented panel that you're really going to enjoy hearing from today. Rachna, Adam, Jeff, they're all here representing General Motors, BMW, and EnergyHub. Let's go around and do some quick introductions. Tell us who you are and what you're doing, how you're working on V2X. Rachna, let's start with you.
Thanks, Heather. So my name is Rachna Handa. I currently am the head of hardware products, home hardware products at GM Energy. So my team is really the product team that is responsible for building out the requirements for all of our home charging solutions, including the recently launched V2H, so vehicle to home enablement bundle that allows customers to take the energy from their EV and power their home. As a quick background, I've been in the grid space for many, many years, mostly at the edge of the grid. Prior to GM, I was at PG&E, EPRI, as well as the U.S. Department of Energy with a quick stint as a software product manager at a software company. Really excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rachna. Adam, over to you. Great.
You may have dropped off.
Yeah, let's send it over to you, Jeff.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Huron. I work with EnergyHub. I've spent my entire career in the automotive industry. Started as an engineer for a tier 1 supplier here in Michigan. Then I transitioned to a consulting role working with automakers and suppliers on electrification strategy. And since started working with EnergyHub for the past 2 years, where I lead our EV strategy and business development. So building direct relationships in the automotive space to enable kind of that connective tissue that connects our utility clients with the grid edge and EVs. So we have several V1G and now V2X programs that are live. So looking forward to this conversation and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jeff. Adam, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure. Thanks, Heather. Great. I moved so I get a better connection here, so I think that worked. My name is Adam Langton. I work with BMW, and I help develop our smart charging and V2G products in the North American market. We have a smart charging program that we've been running for a few years now. It was launched nationally last year, available to all of our drivers. We also announced in March of this year that we would have a V2X product available starting in 2025. So I work on those areas, and I'm excited to talk more about V2X today.
Great. Thank you all. Okay, Jeff, I'd like to start with you. Let's talk big picture. I would love for you to sort of paint this vision of the future for the listeners here. What does success look like for V2X? What does the future look like?
Great question. So at EnergyHub, our mission is really to integrate any customer and any device with the grid to provide flexibility and reliability. So that includes both V1G and vehicle to everything. I think when you talk about V2X specifically, our goal is to support all long dwell use cases in the next few years. We're currently supporting fleet and commercial V2G use cases, examples of that in the Northeast with electric school buses, a program that most of you guys are probably familiar with. It's very well publicized, as well as Nissan Leaf sending energy back to a wastewater treatment plant on the East Coast. We're also launching with an OEM partner for residential non-exporting V2X later this summer. So I think success really in the near term is proving that the technology works and that customers can be fairly and effectively compensated, and then all stakeholders are able to pencil their business models respectively. In terms of midterm success, I think it's really ensuring that we have a foundation that's built and strong enough to roll out access to these services in a way that's clearer and more efficient than it is today. So standardization and interoperability are obviously buzzwords, but I think they're very important and are going to be necessary for this to happen. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the near term.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, business models and customer centricity are things we'll have to come back to. Rashna, my next question is for you. I hear that GM is rolling out its first vehicle to home EV charging products. Exciting. Congrats. That benefit of providing backup power to homes, especially homes where they are prone to grid outages, has potential to be a game changer for so many. Tell us about this new program.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, we are very excited about our launch for the vehicle to home. It has been a tremendous effort from our entire team. So really the product is available on our website. It's gmenergy.gm.com. And to do it, a customer needs to purchase a compatible EV. So right now we've announced that the Silverado RST will be a compatible EV. We will have also announced 4 other models on the website that will also be compatible. Those dates are still TBD. So first you need a GM compatible EV. You then need the power shift charger, which is a bidirectional enabled charger. So it's an EVSE that can do bidirectionality. And then you also need the V2H enablement bundle. So that includes our home hub, which you would put the circuits that you would want backed up on it, as well as an inverter, as well as a dark start battery. And I can go into more detail about what each of these products do, but really they work together to enable a customer to take the energy from their EV and power their home when there's no grid power present.
Great, thank you. I think I'm going to have some follow-up questions for you, but since we've got Adam here, I want to turn it over to you. There was an automotive dive piece just 7 days ago, sort of reminding the world about BMW's future EVs and how they're going to be supporting bidirectional charging. I wanted to ask you just to share a little bit more about BMW's bidirectional charging plans in case anyone is not familiar with them yet.
Sure. So we announced in March that we would be making our Neue class of vehicles bidirectionally capable. And that will come out in 2025. The release date will be different in different markets, so our global launch is 2025. And what we said is that we want to enable initially to explore vehicle to home opportunities so that somebody can use this as backup power. But we also envision in the long run that this could be used for vehicle to grid functionality as well, to actually return power to the grid. And so we're looking forward to this as being an important feature that our customers are going to find valuable, both to use as emergency power as one function, but also to use to help them use more renewable energy at home, absorbing solar energy and renewable energy when it's available on the grid, when it's plentiful on the grid, and then using that to power your home when renewable energy is not as plentiful or not available on the grid. It's also an opportunity for customers to potentially save money on their energy costs as well. So they could use that to essentially arbitrage energy prices. So we think this is an exciting opportunity for our EV drivers, and we're looking forward to rolling this out soon.
Great. Thanks, Adam. You kind of inspired a question that I want to maybe open up to everyone here. The industry, including DOE, is sort of touting the integration of EVs with the grid and how it's going to be essential for reducing emissions. Of course, if customers get EVs and the grid is dirty, or they don't have on-site solar, or they aren't selecting into a renewable energy program, there's not going to be a lot of gain here. So what are BMW, GM, Jeff EnergyHub, what is y'all's role in facilitating the pairing of renewable energy with EV charging and bidirectional charging? I mean, maybe the question is, do you see a role for yourself at all?
I can start. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Adam. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there is an opportunity for us. So for us, where we started on this is we actually have a smart charging program that we've rolled out nationally. I mentioned that earlier. And one of the goals of that is to help our customers reduce their carbon emissions and also to use more renewable energy. So we see that there's a role that the automaker can play in helping facilitate our customers to use more renewable energy through these kind of programs. V2G gives you many, many more opportunities. V2X or even vehicle to home as well, give you many more opportunities to be able to use renewable energy at your home. So you can essentially fill up your battery with renewable energy and then use it later in the evening when your home has more load. We think that you could triple the amount of renewable energy that your home uses just by relying on grid renewable energy. So we think there's a big opportunity here. The role that the automaker can play is helping customers understand what the opportunity is here, connecting customers to vehicles that they can use for this, connecting them to services around this, and then using our app and other features so that the customer can feel comfortable using their vehicle for these functions, but know that its primary purpose is for mobility and that we're going to make sure that they can always meet their mobility needs.
Thanks, Adam. Rashna, do you want to add on to that?
No, actually, that's a really well phrased answer. Just adding on a little bit is really our role as automakers is to allow customers to achieve more control over their energy choices in the future. So with an EV, with these home energy systems, you can allow customers through V1G programs or managed charging, like Adam mentioned, as well as even in their own home, how they can integrate other sources of renewable energy to power and provide their energy needs.
Great. Okay, I do have some follow-up questions for you both based on your programs. And Rashna, I might start with you. We know customers have a range of needs. I wanted to hear a little bit more about the bundles and packages that you're offering for your residential customers. And how are you tailoring your products for different types of customers or different needs?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So right now we've launched the vehicle to home enablement bundle. So that's really just that you have taking the power energy from your vehicle and putting it into your home. Our inverter will allow to integrate solar as well as energy storage. So as customers choose to build on their energy needs, they can integrate into our vehicle, into our inverter. And this will be offered later this year. The current offering right now is just V2H. Later this year, we will be rolling out an ESS or energy storage solution that customers can purchase from us, as well as the ability to integrate solar into that same inverter so that they can manage all of their energy through one app, our mobile app.
Great. Thank you. Adam, I've got a follow-up question for you. I would love to hear some insight into what you're trying to do to achieve your goals with new regulatory frameworks. I know I kind of read that the company's kind of working in certain regions on regulatory frameworks, on other measures. What do you hope that these new regulatory frameworks look like, and what do you expect them to look like? Those could be different answers.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we look at the V2X space, we see a need for new regulations that are designed to help facilitate someone connect a mobile storage device to their home and be able to discharge power onto the grid. The existing rules for utilities that govern this kind of space where you're a home and you're producing energy aren't really well suited to a vehicle. And so we need to make sure that those rules are updated and that they're as uniform as they can be across the country. This is really about interconnection requirements that utilities have. In some parts of the country, they've started to develop those and started to consider how a V2X vehicle fits in. But in other parts of the country, they haven't. And so there's existing rules around solar, because obviously solar discharges onto the grid. But this is a very different device. It has a lot more functionality and can turn on and turn off. You could potentially imagine islanding your home from the grid. So all of these functionalities need additional rules to be in place to help facilitate the market. As a customer, what we want to get to the point is, as a customer, that you can go to your dealer and buy one of these vehicles that's bidirectionally enabled, and then know what it's going to take to get it connected into your home, what the cost of that will be. All these things need to be known up front, or it's going to be hard for someone to actually purchase these vehicles.
Yeah. I might just pause to see if Jeff or Rashna, either of you have anything you want to add on to this, because I know the regulation space is so big and also really kind of tied to business models as well.
And Jeff, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I think I think the interconnection process is certainly one thing. I think we also need support from state regulators to ensure that programs are designed appropriately and compensation opportunities are given to all market actors, so that we can really instill confidence in the investments that are being made, and that there's revenue opportunities behind them. I think there's a lot of examples of things that the government has already done to try to support this, like existing pilots in the Northeast specifically, that have been greenlit or mandated by regulators. So I think more of that is helpful, so we can really prove this out with real customers and real interaction between stakeholders. So I think those things are important, building off of that.
And I can add on. It was really just reiterating what Adam and Jeff said about working to make this an easy experience for the customer and to make sure that they know exactly what they're getting into. Because as Adam mentioned, there's a lot of variability amongst the utilities across the nation, and we're seeing that. And I think as people start aligning and realizing that we need to make the process easier in order to enable adoption, that will help from a product perspective as customers take it.
Great. Thank you all. Jeff, you kind of mentioned some existing pilots that had already happened in the Northeast. And, I think that's inspired me to sort of ask this question to both Adam and Rashna of what pilots have you run already that have been really successful? And what did you learn from those that are sort of influencing your larger rollouts?
I can go first since I think Adam goes. I will say I am a very product focused person. So from a pilot perspective, we have an entire team that works on that. But we've done a number of successful publicly announced V1G, so managed charging pilots with utilities. We are discussing how we do a V2H or V2G pilot with a number of other utilities. There's definitely a lot of interest in there. There's definitely, as Adam and Jeff referred to, challenges when it comes to the practicalities of those pilots. So I think I can't speak to any V2G pilots at this point, but we look forward with collaborating with the industry to get to that point.
On the BMW side, we have collaborated with PG&E to do testing of V2G vehicles in their lab environment, and the goal there was to demonstrate the ability to discharge power to follow commands, but also we were able to test some use cases that were relevant to what we think utilities would experience. We tried to do optimizations of renewable energy, and we've also tested power outages, which I think will be a really critical use case as well. In Europe, we have had field tests of V2G vehicles that were on the road last year. And we did a number of tests there. And that was an interesting learning experience because we were able to test those in a field environment, using employees that were driving them in a typical driving pattern, and then test when they'd be available, how often they'd be available, how does that impact somebody's mobility. So that was useful for us to learn more about the customer experience, which is going to be really critical here. That customers have good experiences with this. If they go to their V2G vehicle and they're ready to leave and the battery is empty, that's going to be a real deterrent on people using this in the future. So one of the things we're really focused on is how do we make sure the customer has a good experience that allows them to keep using this on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Convenience is king here, I should say. Okay, Adam, maybe a question. It sounds like you'll run a bunch of really interesting pilots. Are there any insights that you can share? And it could either be like, okay, this was a really helpful insight to know how we should be moving forward, or it could be an insight of this really did not work well and we should avoid this in the future.
Yeah. So what we've learned so far is the interconnection process is a big challenge for this. So it needs to be really clear for customers how that process is going to work, how long it's going to be, what the expenses are. Ideally, a customer would know that before they purchase the vehicle. So that's one thing I think we've noticed. And that's going to be, it's a challenge because it's going to take us working together with utilities. That's why we wanted to work together with PG&E on this and explore this further. We're going to have our dealers and our partners ready so that when customer decides they want to buy this vehicle, we can provide them all the information they need to know about what it takes to have a bi-directional vehicle in their home, the installation process, and what it can do. That's a big challenge. So that's more, I guess, on the customer education side as well. And then I think another important piece is that we are, as automakers, in terms of managing the customer's experience in this, we're going to have to make sure that we have the right tools to communicate to our customers, what they're experiencing when their vehicle is discharging. We're going to have to give them the right choices, the right information so that they can make decisions. If there's an outage, do they want to continue charging their vehicle? They're going to, as they do that, they're going to reduce their range that is available for them to leave home. And if there's an outage, there's not another opportunity to charge their vehicle, at least not immediately. And so we're going to have to really engage with the customer so they understand those trade-offs, they understand what's happening with their vehicle. And I think those are going to be really critical customer experience things that we as an OEM are well suited to address, but we need to learn more so that we're ready when we offer this product.
Sounds like you got a lot of good insights there. Rashna, is there any other insights that you'd want to sort of add on to the pilots that y'all have ran?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize Adam's point on customer education. So as we've been rolling this out, a lot of people are intrigued. I think that as they learn more, they're more interested in purchasing. But it's really, they have all the same questions that Adam had mentioned, is how is this going to work? What does this mean for when I actually do need to drive somewhere? How will this integrate into my house? What type of what do I need to ask the electrician? So at GM Energy, we have a service called EV Concierge, where you can call as many times as you want and ask as many dumb questions as you want. But I think, as Adam mentioned, that there's a huge customer education component, that the customers do look to the OEMs as a source of information and that they trust that their car is going to work. And so they have all these questions. And so as we can build that education for the customer to make them feel more comfortable that, yes, this is really something that I can do with my car, in addition to drive it from point A to point B.
Yeah, the customer education piece. Big. Maybe we'll come back to that. I also know I want to come back to this piece around interconnection and installation, but I want to acknowledge that there are some questions that have been highly upvoted in the Q&A. So I want to start with one. Thanks, Bill. The question is, what standards are being developed for interoperability of EVs and HGX equipment between or across manufacturers? And what is the time frame for that interoperability?
I can start. I think the standard that I think we are looking at is the ISO 15118-20. So that's really the communication between the charger and the EV. So just to be upfront, currently, the reason GM is only working with currently compatible GM EVs is that we had to modify the protocol that we were already using since there was no standard. So we are part of the industry standards, and we are working toward that. As far as the time frame goes, that's always the $1 million question when it comes to standards. We hope soon, because it would really help the customers be able to use this elsewhere, but I can't speak to that right now. I hope we're definitely aware and involved in that standard body so that we design to that standard when it does roll out.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. There is a need for a charging station in a vehicle to be able to communicate. There are some existing standards, and those will need to continue to develop. I don't think that that's going to be a major obstacle, though, in the long run to rolling this out. I think that most of the B2G transactions that we're going to see are going to happen when a driver is at home. And so you're going to have a driver with their charging station, and they are going to be doing most of that at home. And so as long as the vehicle and the charging station are compatible, I think we'll see that in terms of that they can communicate. I think that won't be a huge obstacle using the existing standards that are available. there is a need to be able to connect with utilities, right? And communicate to utilities what's happening, or learn about events from utilities. Utilities saying that they want more charging in a certain place at a certain time, or if they have a planned outage, which is a tool that's used in California. In the case of wildfires, there can be planned outages. We could know about those planned outages and then plan how a vehicle responds to that. That could be really useful as well. That takes some standardized communication. But there, I also think there's a lot of existing standards for how utilities communicate. I think we can rely on those to get the messages. So there's more work that needs to be done, but I don't think it's the biggest barrier right now.
Great. Thanks both. Jeff, is there anything else you want to add on to that?
No, I think, being able to provide products and services that are easily understandable and available is something that'll be really important for customers to actually be able to adopt this technology that enables the services and the value that we want to create. I think from EnergyHub's perspective, we are the connective tissue from the utility to the grid edge. So it's not as important to us what the EV charger is saying to the EV. Obviously, it's very important in the grand scheme of things. But really solving that many-to-many problem and enabling the information flow back and forth and trying to help on the optimization side. There's a ton of variables that go in. The automaker has, certain things that they're doing that's customer facing. The grid has several different potential, value streams that they're trying to unlock, and then trying to make sure all those things marry together in a way that always keeps the customer's mobility requirements kind of central. And so there's a lot of complexity that goes into that, and there's communication required at each link there. But I think we're moving in the right direction, but making it so that it's not a thing where you have to mix and match very precisely from the customer's perspective is really important.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask another from the Q&A. Elizabeth, thank you. She asked, are any of you engaged with developing V2X AC inverter onboard vehicle solutions, or are you focused on V2X DC solutions?
I can take that right now. So right now our solution is a V2X DC solution. We are looking at the V2X AC solution very seriously. Quite frankly, that's a little bit of a longer time frame, as it would involve certain decision makings on the vehicle design as well as our charger design. And the other challenge with an AC that we've been talking to utilities about is if you have an AC interconnect and you have a mobile interconnect, how does that work? So that's something that the industry needs to kind of align on, is that what if you did have AC on the vehicle, on board the vehicle, and you had the inverter, because a car drives, like an ESS stays in the same place, solar stays in the same place, but a car can move. So I think there's a technical question, and then there's a broader regulatory industry question on how that would work. But yeah, we're definitely looking at it from an R&D perspective, just to understand more about how it could work.
On the BMW side, I can't comment on what the future product would look like. But what I can say is the testing that we've done so far with the field testing that we've done in Europe and the lab testing that we've done here in the US with PG&E has been based on DC bidirectional charging. But we, in the future, our product may look different. We just haven't made announcements about that yet.
Great. Thank you both. I'm going to ask just a couple more through here because there's actually a lot of engagement in the Q&A. So this came up a little bit already, but it, maybe this would be the opportunity for y'all to expand on it. Nick asked, how are OEMs working with utilities to create a seamless experience for customers? One size fits all solutions to not work with a variety of utilities, geographic locations, and types of technology.
I'll go ahead and jump in first on this one. So it's a really good question because it's going to take a lot of coordination between the utilities and the automakers, we think, to make this work for customers. So what we've tried to do is reach out to a number of utilities and talk to them to understand what they're thinking about V2G, what their expectations are, what their timeline is, and how they're approaching interconnection. So we do that, reaching out to our utility partners to connect with them and just do information sharing on this is really the first step. And then we've also worked closely with PG&E on some of the testing here, and as well as trying to help them understand how we're approaching the customer experience, and what we think the challenges are going to be. And a lot of it really comes down to we need a really seamless interconnection process that makes it easy for customers to understand what's happening in the different stages of it, and what that timing is going to take and what the cost is going to take. This is a problem that utilities have solved before. They faced this when home solar was starting to roll out. They didn't have existing interconnection approaches for when a home was generating, electricity onto the grid. And utilities and the solar industry came together and solved that. So I'm confident we can solve that, but it does take more coordination, and we'll need to continue to work together with utilities to do that. Government agencies can help facilitate that, and PUCs and other agencies can help facilitate driving some of that conversation, but also driving what's the goal? What's the timeline that we want somebody to meet? Do we have a target for how many days it should take between somebody does an interconnection application for a VDX vehicle when they get it approved? Things like that is a role that utility commissions could help us on as well.
Great. I am kind of wondering, do you feel like there's any lessons that can be gleaned from the process that the industry went through with solar interconnection?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't closely involved in that. But what I think happened in that process was you got a lot of the stakeholders together, and particularly with the utility grid experts who can look at what they're actually trying to achieve and what the goals are. I think that's what it's going to take, is the industries getting together, but at a really specific level, because it's a set of engineers at the utilities who's reviewing these proposals, and they need certain information, but they're also making assumptions about how the technology works. And if we can work together on that, maybe going through individual applications in the beginning where we work really closely to identify ways to make that process more seamless. I think that's what happened on the solar side, and I think we'll need to replicate that here as well.
Great.
I can add on just a little bit. And I would say, going back to what Adam said, is really working with the standards and understanding what utilities need and why they need it, and then trying to meet those standards. So, for example, our current inverter is UL 1741 SB certified. And so as we work with utilities, we're working with them to make sure that we are meeting their requirements that they need in order to facilitate being the easier interconnection, or just understanding that we're meeting their requirements for them to interconnect these. And then they're also working through those challenges that they have internally with making sure that their system is safe and reliable. And I just want to say that we're hoping to offer this V2H solution across all of our vehicles by 2026, LTM-based vehicles. And so really, we're looking forward to a future where we work closely with these utilities so that all customers across the U.S. are able to really have the solution as an offering that they can purchase.
Thanks, Rashna. There's so much that goes into actually making this entire system work. And one part of this is the installation. I know you'll have a partner, a contractor that's working to support customers and permits and connecting to the local utility infrastructure, connecting to the system. I guess in your pilots that you ran, was this partner sort of already working with you? Like, have you had the opportunity to sort of try to work through some of those kinks already that you're anticipating?
Yeah, so let me answer that. So we have not done pilots with the V2H system, but what we do is, because GM's really concerned about safety and making sure things work, that once we were UL certified, we actually installed our system on 10 GM employees' homes to what we call a test environment, where we make sure that it meets all the safety concerns after it's met UL. And so those installations were done by our partner, Qmerit. And really, it was a great partnership because we're really pushing the boundary here, right? We're bringing something new to our customers, and really working with Qmerit really helped them solidify their understanding of our system, understanding kind of how we installed in a variety of homes. We had employees with big homes, employees with small homes, employees with weird garages. Like, it was the whole gamut. So we were able to get a variety of experiences for the installers that were provided by Qmerit. And I think what that's been great for is that education has now percolated through the Qmerit network, through all of their installers. And so as we work with customers to install it, I'm not saying we've hit 100% of all the different variations that are out there in homes and utilities, but we've got a good idea of how our system will work in the real world.
Great. That's exciting. I'm going to come back to technology because there's a couple people who have asked similar questions in the chat related to the battery longevity. I know that's constantly a question that's sort of buzzing in the industry, is how is this going to impact our batteries? Is it going to drain them quickly? Is it going to have a shorter life cycle? What is that looking like from your initial research? And are you expecting to have any kind of related battery warranties for folks that are doing V2X?
I can take that one for right now. I actually don't know. There's a whole really smart group of people working on the warranties. I think at this point, the official public is that we are keeping the warranty as is until we understand more. So there's a whole level of analysis that is there. But right now, there hasn't been any impact to our warranty by adding the V2H capability. That doesn't mean it might not change, but right now but actually the true answer is I don't really know outside of what that group is doing.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I do know. Someone mentioned there's minimal impact. Sorry. Flagged it to me. There's minimal impact to the battery as far as our research says right now.
Love that real-time feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's similar perspective on the BMW side. I think we're trying to understand what the impact will be. And a lot of that is understanding what are the expectations from a customer for how often they cycle a battery. And what are the expectations from a utility for how often the battery cycles. So it's a big difference for if you have a vehicle that's cycling once a month, supporting the house once a month for a few hours, versus something that is being used every day for that purpose. And it also depends on, the depth of the discharge, the power levels that you're discharging at. All those are really critical to it. And I think we don't know what the customers are expecting yet on that. We don't know what utilities are expecting. So once we have a better understanding of that, and that's partially why we're doing this research in the United States and partnering with utilities on this, is to get a better sense of that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, kind of partially putting on my hat in previous days, but understanding that trade-off is one thing, and then communicating it to the customer so they understand what they are doing is going to be really important. And so, it's understanding the value that's being degraded, if at all, and then building in safeguards in a way where the OEM has control over a certain number of cycle counts, like Adam was saying, whether that is, reserving functionality for specific events, or saying between 40 and 60%, the customer can do what they want, and then they're compensated in exchange for that. I think there's a lot that's going into it. And in terms of how some of our partners are approaching it, I think it's conservative up front. And there's, some programs later this year that'll launch non-exporting V2X that I think are going to be really interesting as we take these battery program models and then slot in EVs, which is kind of an efficient way of testing this out in the early days, and pretty lucrative from the customer perspective program designs, where we can really see the differences in what a battery is like when you can drive away with it, and then helping the customer understand and seeing how it resonates with them through different methods of communication of what this trade-off really is. Because I think there's a lot of headlines out there that are scary, and there's not as much data that needs to be presented. And so there's kind of this gamut of people who are very conservative and not sure, and some that are less concerned and are building a lot of data around this. So I think over the next couple of years, this story is going to be a lot more concrete and more easily digestible.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to try to weave a few different thoughts into one sort of mega question. So, the ecosystem in this space is huge. There's so many different people working in it, trying to work in it. I would love to hear, y'all kind of articulate who are all of those stakeholders in this space, like who's kind of central to the work. But then also, I think there's this kind of related question to like how you're doing various types of stakeholder engagement. And it could be, your focus on customer centricity. There's a question in the chat about how you're working with dealerships, which you both mentioned already as being critical. What are you already doing there? Are you training sales associates? There's always a key element to success with how we work with other stakeholders and other partners. So would love to kind of open up this big question for y'all.
I can start with that one. I think our goal is really to make life easy for the customer. And so I think as we work with our partners, both on the private side and the utility side, we work with people to say, how does that customer experience get easier? How does it get better? And I think, is that the question? I may not be taking it right, but as we prioritize who we work with, it's really trying to understand what that customer experience is. What are some of the challenges within that experience that we want to work to make it more seamless? Because again, we want to see success. GM is looking to not only sell amazing EVs, but really also build out that ecosystem around the EV so that a customer not only has an EV, but they can really derive a lot more value from that EV just in driving from point A to point B. So as you mentioned, there's a bunch of stakeholders in that sphere. And so we work with everybody from utilities and the education of all those people that enables that ecosystem to thrive.
Great. And do you have any data points yet on working with dealers?
Yes, we have so many data points. We are working with them. I would say that we're working on an education. There's a lot of interest. As you said, there's a lot of questions. The dealers are very smart. They know their customers really well. And so it's been a really great interaction that they're asking a lot of the key questions that their customers will ask. And a lot of them seem very excited, so we're working with them to build out tools. So as I mentioned, we have EV concierge where their employees can call. So it starts at home. So we had our employees test it out. Now dealer employees are also interested. And again, we have resources that are available to just them for dealer education, but we also have resources that are available to all customers that the dealer and their employees can use to learn more because they are excited. And so as we able to educate them, then they can take that and work with their customers to find the right solution as we roll out more GM compatible or EV or V2H compatible EVs.
That's great. I think the person who had posed this question was sort of mentioning how sometimes there's a challenge for auto dealers to actually successfully sell EVs. I think that's kind of in part because of this disaggregated model of dealerships everywhere. And they, all have different staff, different leaders. Do you feel confident in the ability to sort of scale a similar, replicable, successful model nationally with all of the dealers?
Yeah, I think that we have, yes, I think when people as they sell EVs, they're really working to understand what their customers need. At the end of the day, we're providing a product that different customers have for different needs. And we're trying to show them how awesome an EV is. And one of the benefits of introducing products like the V2X or V2H is it really helps that customer unlock more value from the EV. So as you talk about this, there are challenges with the education piece, but we believe that as we build that ecosystem and help that customer unlock more value, that becomes an easier education for everyone to kind of learn more about how EVs can benefit that customer's use case and their needs. I don't know if I answered the question, but that was
I think.
Go ahead, Adam.
I think on the BMW side, it's similar. We want to have something that we can offer to all our customers, and the dealer is going to have to play a role in doing that. It's definitely a new area that dealers don't have a lot of experience on yet. So it's going to take educating the dealers, and we're hoping that utilities can help us do that as well. We also will have installation partners that can play a role in that. That's typical process in something like this. So I think the installation partners could be key as well to helping educate the customers and walking them through the process.
Great. Thank you both. Because we've got 15 minutes here, I want to make sure to get some other areas that we haven't talked about yet. And one of them connected to other types of stakeholders in the policy world. I would love to hear a little bit about how y'all are working with state governments. How do they fit into the whole ecosystem?
I can start. I am a very, into the technical. So I know that there's a whole group of very qualified people who are working with them. I will say that I am not close to that right now. So yeah, I'm much more close to the technical side.
That's fair. Adam, we've got two of you right now. At least I can see two of you. So maybe I'll pass it over to you. I think in our previous conversations, I've heard you say that you've been working with some state governments. How are they sort of explain to us their role in the ecosystem?
So I think the state government can play a role in helping set targets for utilities for what they want them to do, helping to prioritize this. I think that's going to be important for the state government to do. I think it's going to be important for them to frame the goals for the interconnection process and then drive that process so that it can work for V2X vehicles. So I think in some states they're already engaging in this. I know in California there's been some activity. There's existing proceedings where that work can happen. California's also done a lot of work on stationary storage. So yeah, I think states have a really important role in driving the utilities in this space.
Great, thank you all. Maybe this, if it's a curveball, tell me that like this isn't your area of expertise, but I'm kind of curious at a higher level, managed charging has a long way to go before it's a real market. And industrial policy, as we know it, is government policy to encourage the development and growth of all or part of the economy in pursuit with any kind of public goal. I'm curious, what would you say that V2X, or specifically vehicle to grid, home, business, needs? What kind of support do they need from the government to develop and grow this market?
I can take that one to start. I think what's important really as a precursor is to prioritize managed charging programs more broadly, because I think that allows us to prove out the efficacy and the benefits of load management more generally at scale. And I think that's really foundational to the evolution to V2X. Whereas I think piloting and providing technology and products that support V2X are important. I think also unlocking the full potential of V1G will go a long way in enabling the V2X future. So I think that's something that's really important that shouldn't be lost, is that there's a lot of untapped potential there in some of the less sexy use cases, but I think very, very valuable use cases.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Is there anything that y'all would want to add on to that?
Yeah, I would jump in on the last part. I do think that there's an important role for establishing the value of V2G for utilities and state governments as well. I think that's another and maybe answer to your previous question. I think what consumers or even commercial entities that are thinking about getting a V2G or V2X fleet would be we're wondering is like, what's the value proposition to me? And I think that state governments could help by pushing the utilities to make that value apparent, making it more transparent, making opportunities to capture some of that value available. Also, just setting up programs that have an existing set, administratively set what the value is so that people start going into the space and explore this a little bit more. That's often the big challenge. It's hard for us from where we sit to know what that value proposition is. And if we don't know what it is, we're not going to be able to communicate that to customers. Some of the value is going to happen at your home. So if you can respond to emergencies, maybe use more of your renewable energy, that's going to happen at home. And we can work with customers to understand that value proposition to them. But when it comes to true V2G, where you're actually discharging to the grid, which we may have an impact on the battery. We don't know yet, but does limit the amount of driving you can do over a certain period of time. So there's some impact to you. A customer is going to need to know what they're getting out of that. And we're going to need to articulate that as part of the sales process. And I think utilities and the state government can say, we need to understand what that value is. And utilities need to start going forward with programs, even if they don't know what the full value is, in at the highest level of certainty, starting to put some values out there. An example of a program like this that we've seen is the PG&E V2G pilot, where they've put some value on it in front of customers, in front of third parties, and then say, hey, let's go out and test this. Let's see what the adoption is. Let's see how this works. And then let's see if our value assumptions are correct or not. And then we can adjust those. So I think that's an approach that I'd like to see more utilities take.
Yeah, I think one thing is define the value, and then it incentivizes those to go out and optimize and actually unlock that value. So it's kind of the chicken and egg situation where I think we're doing a lot of work independently and with partners to prove that this optimization can target transformer level strategies or the distribution system broadly. But being able to provide some sort of directional incentive that then brings more to the table for this optimization and getting all these parties communicating together, I think is going to be super helpful and evolving.
Great. Thanks all. I realize we've been really more focused on the residential side, and we have said that we might be talking about grid, home or business. How are y'all, if at all, working with commercial applications?
Yeah, so we have some fleet and commercial partners and programs that are doing V2G today, like I alluded to at the beginning. Some electric school buses dispatching energy back to the grid. I think that's a very easy use case that a lot of people are targeting in the early days. Vehicle to building, leveraging Nissan Leafs to power wastewater treatment plant. And then looking and working with other fleet partners to identify use cases that are kind of low-hanging fruit for them. I think the fleet market is difficult because electrifying a fleet has a lot that comes with it already. And then when you try to tack grid services on top of that, it can be a turnoff. So it's a little bit more complicated to really get into the weeds of some of these really exciting grid service use cases with fleets. But I think that's going to change as companies and players become more comfortable with just electrification more broadly. And then there'll be overlap between existing utility programs and fleets that are capable of serving a grid need. So I think that's something that I'm really excited about and working with our fleet partners to enable.
I think on the BMW side, most of our customers are residential customers. So we don't have a whole lot of fleet customers, but we do have some fleet customers, and I can see this being a valuable option for them. What's different about a commercial fleet operator is that they are going to be more highly attuned to the ROI and the payback that they're going to get to this. So that's going to need to be really clear to them up front if they're going to be able to use this. So that's one important consideration. But the other is that they tend to have certain times when they're using their fleet and certain times when they're not using their fleet. So it tends to be a little more clear when the vehicle is going to be available. And so that's an opportunity for us because there's more you can do than because of the usage patterns, what I think we'll see for the types of fleets that we'd end up working with.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Adam is saying, so currently GM's offering is only residential. GM does have a big commercial fleet business. But as Adam mentioned, that the duty cycle is different for those cars, and those fleet managers are very concerned about those vehicles meeting those duty cycles and those use cases for why they're purchasing. So we are working to understand those needs and understanding what sort of solution really helps the commercial side also unlock value. But right now it's really only focused on residential.
Great. Thanks all. I just want to acknowledge that the audience has been so engaged and there's so many questions we won't get to. So what I want to propose in maybe the next 4 minutes is we'll do just a quick lightning round of a couple questions. So I'll ask you to keep your responses just super brief. It could be 30 seconds. So maybe a quick fun one. In a few years, do you think that all EVs you produce will be bidirectional capable?
I will go ahead and take that one first. So GM has announced that all Ultium-based vehicles, EVs, will be enabled with bidirectionality. So by 2026. So that's something that we are very excited and look forward to. So I don't know about all EVs, but I know GM has said theirs.
On the BMW side, we haven't made a commitment to making them all bidirectionally capable yet. I think it will depend on, we will be releasing some, like I mentioned, the Neue Class vehicles will be bidirectionally capable. That's a new line of EVs that we'll be releasing. But I think that will depend how fast it expands, depending on what the customer uptake looks like and what the value proposition is.
Great.
And I think from our side, we don't make vehicles, obviously, but our goal is to make sure if there's a customer in a service territory that has an EV that's capable, that they're able to access that program. So that's what we're working towards.
Great. Okay, next one. Is there anything standing in the way of scale right now? What do we need to take off?
I think the biggest thing in the way of scale is probably the interconnection process. It's going to be the biggest one. That needs to be a scalable process in order for us to scale.
100%, 2,100%. So interconnection and then just standards across how that works. And the other challenge that I think gets overlooked in at least the residential space is across the permitting process and the local AHJ, so authorities having jurisdiction. So California, I know, is having concerns about let's standardize how these AHJs look and permit these projects, because it is wildly different depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, and it's based on that person. So as we standardize both the interconnection and the permitting installation process, I think that will really help with scale.
Jeff, any thoughts?
Yeah, and I think product availability, both from a technical and price point standpoint, is important, because if we want to reach all customers, then we need to be able to reach them at their price point, and then have the technology to back that up, and then also to effectively compensate them, which I know we've said a few times, but keeping it very seamless, very simple, very transparent for the customer to understand the value, to really be able to realize the full value stack from the grid side, so then we can really provide commensurate incentives for the different market actors to be involved.
Great, thank you. This might be my last question. If you could make one request to anyone and it would be fulfilled, what would it be? Maybe aspirational thinking here.
I'll go. I think it's important for all stakeholders to act in a way that's best for the industry, rather than short-term business success, which I think is not always the easiest thing to do sometimes. But I think there's risk in some strategies that undermines our success if we don't build solutions and partnerships and technologies in a way that's going to really support mass market adoption, and also that enables the ultimate customer experience at the end. So I'm really excited about the work that we're doing directly with automakers. I think it's great to see that there's communication now between the energy side and the automotive side, and there's really a gap that's being bridged there. And I think we need to continue to do that and make sure that these two industries are becoming more in lockstep and working together to deliver all of these cool things that we've been talking about for a while.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
I think from my perspective, I guess the main thing I'd want to ask for would be of the PUCs and maybe to a certain extent the utilities, is to align on a really fast interconnection process that is as uniform as we can make it across the country. I know that's asking for a lot, but that would be what I'd want. That it could be really fast to support the sales process of these vehicles, but also meet the utility requirements for safety and other things like that. I think we can manage that, but like a commitment from them to really push through a scalable, just seamless process for doing interconnection.
Great. Rashna, you've got the closing comments.
I can add, so just reiterating what Adam and Jeff said is true collaboration between utilities, the private sector, the energy side, and the auto side. Because as people put more input and skin in the game and understand that we can all work together to find the most optimal solution for everybody, otherwise you start creating silos that start leading to a poor customer experience. And so as the collaboration grows, I think it's really important that people break down those silos and understand it's the same customer. We just want to make sure that their experience is seamless and enjoyable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. For those of you who tuned in, thank you to EnergyHub for sponsoring this free forum, making this dialogue possible. And thank you so much to our panelists who joined and actually engaged in this really lively conversation. I just want to let everyone know that this is recorded and it will be uploaded. And also Canary has a free daily newsletter. So if you aren't subscribed, check that out. Everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.